What you're going to see here is this is a British-built Vickers Model 1936. So this is what you call an interwar tank. And what do they mean by that? These are the tanks and military vehicles that were developed after the First World War, before the Second World War broke out, and they're based on principles of how people thought tanks would be used. And all of those principles obviously were proven wrong in 1939 with German Blitzkrieg and their use of armored forces. So the Vickers, the concept at the time in those interwar years is they wanted to have that simple tank, not those giant ones like that the British had in the First World War, but those small mobile tanks that they would pivot. We'd hopefully never get into a trench warfare situation, and they would be used like cavalry, like horses, but armored horses. They would swarm the enemy. They would move behind enemy lines. It's a two-person vehicle. You have your vehicle operator in the front. You can see the hatches up. And then you have a turret, and that's the crew commander and gunner of this light Vickers tank. Now, the museum just acquired this. You're the first people to ever see this in the tank arena. This is the debut of the Vickers 1936. So here, it's a tank, but it's 1936. So the armor on this is actually thinner than that armored truck, the Oshkosh Sandcat, because it's really just meant for protecting the crew inside from small arms, not fighting other tanks. It's for infantry support. The British were building these tanks, and this was their lead export tank. At that time, the British had great reason to want light, small tanks. They had a huge empire to defend. So they could dispatch these on ship, and armored Rolls-Royce armored cars and small Vickers tanks. And in their colonial empire, they were king. And other countries thought that this is the way warfare was going as well. The main weapon on it is a Vickers machine gun, which is like a machine gun that was used in the First World War in trench warfare. And it just has one additional crew member. At this point, most of these small tanks didn't even have radios. The crew commander would be communicating with other tanks and with infantry using flags. So this is very early in the development of armored warfare. These were obviously hugely obsolete this was built in 1936, and only 3 years later we see it in 1939, the Panzer III, the Panzer IV, and tanks like the Soviet or Russian T-34 coming out. But this was the concept of armored vehicles in that interwar period. They are faster than their First World War counterparts, but they were still lightly armored for fighting infantry and maneuverability on the battlefield. Now, our crew here, and I'll just point out the driver because driver is Sam Richardson. He's actually the curator of the Canadian Tank Museum and the Ontario Regiment Museum. You can't see him there. And I'm pointing him out because he's such a busy guy being the curator, he hardly ever gets to come out here and play in the dirt. So he gets to be the driver for the debut of the Vickers. All right, so Vickers 1936, an interwar tank, an infantry fighting tank. Let's hear it for the Vickers crew one last time. All of these moving vehicles cost a lot of money to maintain. Volunteers keep them running, but it's through contributions and donations of our community and the larger world community that keeps this large collection of military vehicles alive. You can support us by liking our social media feeds or by going to tankmuseum.ca and making a one-time or subscription contribution. Those contributions go directly to maintaining one of the world's largest fleets of operational historical military vehicles.